My name is Pip Hare, and next year I'm going to be competing in the Vendee Globe race, a single-handed, non-stop round the world race. I grew up boating, and I'd say it was boating rather than sailing. So when I was very young, my grandfather had a folk boat which he kept on the East Coast, and so I first got introduced to boating then, and I was tiny, I mean sort of 2 or 3 years old. And my parents sailed as well, so all the way through my childhood we owned a cruising boat, and I really grew up jumping in the water, swimming ashore, rowing dinghies, finding rope swings. It was a real kind of swallows and Amazons adventures. I decided 10 years ago that I wanted to do the Vendee Globe. Well, it had been a dream since I was a teenager, but I couldn't work out how to get into it. And 10 years ago, I just realised that the way to get into something like this is just to do whatever you can with whatever you can. And so at the time I owned a racer cruiser. It was my home, I lived on it, and I'd done loads of ocean sailing in it, but never racing. So my first step was to try and understand whether I enjoyed solo sailing and whether I had the aptitude for it. So I decided that I would do a single-handed delivery across the Atlantic out of the race format. And that was, I did that at the beginning of 2009. It was from Uruguay to the UK, 7,500 miles, and it took me 58 days. And during that time, I established that I actually really enjoyed being on my own, and I enjoyed all the challenges that solo sailing throws at you. And B, I discovered that I had the aptitude. I learned how to take short naps. I reaffirmed the fact that I had all of the skills I needed to keep the boat together. So from there, I was ready to go on to competition. My first competition was the All-Star, which I was able to do in my boat, so in IRC. And then I moved on to the Mini Transat, which is a more competitive class. I was able to go to France, so I started out with the Artemis Academy in their first year. And I trained in one of the great French training centres, learning about all sorts of things, weather, psychology, physiology, techniques. I went on to do 2 Mini Transats, which all the time helped me to progress, to develop, to learn collectively with other people, which was amazing. And then after the Mini, I moved into Class 40. I did some double-handed Class 40 racing, including the Transat Jacques Vabre in 2017, and then some fully crewed stuff. And that enabled me to get used to bigger boats, and also just all the time sailing with people who were better and competing against people who could up my game. And then finally, at the beginning of this year, I got the opportunity to charter this Amaka, which is an older boat, it's a year 2000 boat. And so I thought, right, well, I've got 10 years of solo racing behind me, and now's my chance, and I'm going to enter the Vendee Globe. So this boat is a year 2000 Open 60, which has been classed as in Amaka. It was originally built for Bernard Stam, who's a very well-respected, renowned ocean racing sailor. It's been around the world 4 times. So Stam won the Around Alone in it twice. It did the Barcelona race in 2012 with a Spanish duo, and most recently it took Alain Rohrer, Swiss skipper, who's the youngest sailor ever to compete the Vendee Globe. It took him round in 2016. Because this is a 19-year-old design, and by the start it's going to be a 20-year-old design, then in some ways you wouldn't recognise it as an Amaka next to, for example, the new Hugo Boss, which has just been launched with the foils and the crazy shapes. So it's definitely going to be a slower boat. But for me, with only a 2-year build-up to the Vendee, I'm really happy to have this boat, and I think it's a good starting position for me. It's incredibly strong. It's got longitudinal bulkheads and full transverse bulkheads all the way through, which means structurally it is a tank. It's also very, very simple system. So I have a canting keel and a single canard. I have water ballast down the centre line, which keeps my bow down upwind. And that's it really in terms of the technical stuff on board. So when you think the Vendee Globe is, it's a race about, there's a lot about keeping the boat together, making sure you can fix everything. You know, to finish this race is epic. And so for me, I'm racing in a slower boat, but I think there are greater chances, so long as I don't do something stupid, I think there are greater chances for this boat to finish the race. And for my first Vendee, just to finish would be an epic achievement. Solo ocean racing is, I think, it's probably one of the most uncompromising sports that is out there. It requires so much of a person. It's not just about sailing. In fact, sailing is a tiny portion of what we have to do on a daily basis. So you need to be able to diagnose and then to fix every single tiny little problem that might occur on the boat. So that is electronics, electrics, charging systems, sail repairs, rope work, rigging work, mechanics, because I've got an engine on board, so obviously I'm using the engine to charge my batteries. On top of that, I need to be able to navigate, so proficient use of computer programs, weather modelling. I'm not allowed anybody else to route for me, I have to do my own routing. And then on top of that, I have to look after myself. So I manage my own nutrition, I have to manage my own sleep patterns. So all the time we're working under sleep deprivation. I'm sleeping for 20 or 30 minutes at a time. And if I get ill or I injure myself in any way, then I have to be able to treat myself. So there are so many requirements, so many things that you have to train for, so many things that you have to be beyond proficient at, because, you know, imagine, okay, you've got to fix and diagnose a tiny electrical problem. That's one thing on the land, but doing it in the middle of the night with a head torch on a boat that's doing 20 knots and pounding through the waves, and the noise is unbelievable. To be able to get those skills to that level where you're able to do those sorts of things when you've only had 3 hours sleep in the last 24 it's a lot to ask of a human being. And that's why I love the sport, because my word, it's hard. Solo ocean racing is a total mix of the most euphoric, adrenaline-filled, exciting sailing you could possibly imagine in your life, and also this feeling of always being on the edge of sheer terror, and just needing to stay one step ahead. It's a mix of some incredible feelings, but I mean, particularly with this boat, with my Amaka here, the first times that I've really had that going and I've been on my own on board, it's unbelievable. It's a powerful machine, it's huge. You look up the mast, and my air draft is 29 meters, and you look up at all of that sail and you're charging through the water and there's waves crashing over the deck, and you just think, wow, I'm doing this on my own. It's just amazing, and I can't get enough of it. When I was growing up, I was absolutely transfixed by Peter Blake. I read everything there was about him, all of the coverage in the papers. You know, I watched his whitbread races and then go on to the America's Cup. So he very much was, when I was growing up, he was my sailing legend. And after that, I think, you know, for somebody like me, what Ellen MacArthur achieved in such a small amount of time at such a young age is just incredible, and to this day it is incredible, and she still holds the female record for the Vendee Globe, which is amazing. And in modern day now, in my area in particular, you know, I'm looking to Sam Davies, who I think is an incredible sailor with a really diverse load of experience behind her, and I'm really rooting for her in the Vendee. Bearing in mind that fewer than 100 sailors have ever finished this race, to finish is going to be amazing. I have set myself a target of trying to beat Ellen MacArthur's record, because she set it in a boat of this generation, and so it's a good thing to aim for. Realistically, with 6 women in the race, all with newer boats than me, it's likely that the female record will have been reset by the time I get in, but that's still a goal for me. And then ultimately, 2024, I'm going to do it again in a foiling boat.